This is Eagle Means Business. I'm James Holland, your host. Today we're visiting with Todd and Tammy Kuntz of Mr. K's Farmhouse. How are you guys?
We're good.
Good, good. And this is a show where we talk with local entrepreneurs and get to know how their businesses operate, how they fell into, in some cases, their business, and some of the challenges and some of the real positive things that they have doing business here in Abilene or Central Kansas in the Eagle community. Now, the Kuntz family is we're here at Mr. K's Farmhouse. We've got the Eisenhower room right next door. You'll notice the beautiful poster here by Norman Rockwell, correct? Here in the background. And here at Mr. K's Farmhouse, there's quite a bit of history. But not only the history of Mr. K's Farmhouse, but also the Kuntz family has quite a history in the restaurant business. Todd, can you tell us a little bit about how your family's been involved in it?
My dad originally grew up in Kansas, in Abilene, the North Buckeye community, before going to college in Indiana. And then he always had a desire to move home. And we moved back here in 1978 and assumed the ownership of the A&W, which is no longer there.
Right.
But it was owned by an aunt and uncle, and Clarence and Ada France. And Dad had always told them when they were ready to retire, he would really love to be able to come back and take it over, because he always just loved his growing up in Abilene, Kansas. So that's kind of what brought us back to Abilene.
Sure. Yeah, and Kuntz's Drive-In was the name of that business.
Yeah, it changed to that after my uncle, he moved back also from Indiana. He'd gone to Indiana, and then Dad recruited him to take it over so he could open another restaurant called Mr. K's Buckboard, which is where the M&R Grill is now. Okay. And of course, there's been two others, Mr. K's Express and then the Farmhouse out here.
And Mr. K's Express, that was was that a Dairy Queen at one time?
Yeah.
That was the Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen and Dean's Carryout.
Dean's Carryout. Yeah, I think I've seen photos of it when it was Dean's Carryout.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. So you've had at least 3 or 4 restaurants, not all at the same time, but kind of here and there.
4 in town. Had a couple going at the same time, 2 different times.
Yeah. Now, so you grew up in the restaurant business and just kind of started working at as a young age.
Yep.
And
14. Yeah.
14 years old.
Yeah.
How was the pay back then?
I don't even remember what the pay was, a nickel or 2, but enough to get me gas in my car as a teenager.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and I remember going to the drive-in, and when I first came to town about 15 years ago, and usually when you travel to towns, the first thing you need to do is ask a local, where do you go to eat? Where's the best place to go? And I asked a coworker, I said, where do you go? And she told me, well, you go to Kuntz's Drive-In and get the steak finger basket, which of course has been a love of mine ever since. You guys know that. This kind of place you walk in, and at some point if you say, I need the regular, they know exactly what it is. And that's the case here for me anyway. So I greatly appreciate that. So so what was let's talk a little bit about Mr. K's Farmhouse, and let's go back prior to that. It was known as Lena's, correct? And it was Lena Benson, and kind of tell us a little bit about the story of how this came to be through her efforts.
Well, roughly, you're probably better at dates than me, but roughly when we were at the Buckboard up on North Buckeye, I think Mom and Dad had driven to Salina on Old 40 Highway. And of course, growing up here, Dad knew about Lena's, which was legendary. Even when we went to the zoning board to talk about zoning this back into being a business again, a lot of the commissioners at the time said they could remember Model Ts being lined up and down the lane here. But they saw that it was for sale, and Dad pointed out to Mom that, hey, that'd be a great place that we could actually seat a lot more people. And that was the driving force behind us leaving the North Buckeye location and coming out here, because they did a lot of catering at the time. And I'd been gone for 10 years doing other pursuits, and when I came back, that was one of the first things that they decided to do, was to try and grow because of all the catering they'd done. And they talked to Lena, and she had been retired in here for
Like
20 years, something like that. And she was not in the best of health, and she was so delighted someone like Dad was willing to turn it back into a restaurant.
Sure.
And so that was the big driving force behind us coming here. But as far as her history, she had been here for around 40 years
From the late 20s
as a restaurant.
to 78.
And she, of course, had a connection with Dwight Eisenhower, and had served him here a few times and paddled him on his birthday here.
Yeah, I've
and
seen that. I've seen the photos. Yeah,
yeah,
there's photo proof.
Yeah, along with, there was several other
Yeah.
people that came out here, like Jimmy Stewart, the actor. She'd had a lot of big people out here.
Yeah.
So governor, a couple of
All the Greyhounders.
senators and stuff. So, and a lot of Greyhound people. So she had a rich, rich history here of. A lot of people knew that this was, at one time, there was no I-70.
Right. Yeah.
This was the main thoroughfare,
That's
and had a lot of people come through this place. So we were interested in bringing it back to what it used to be. So
Yeah.
and we tried to keep some of her traditions, like the paddling.
Yeah, and you know, I can imagine when this was Old 40, and traveling across country on car was something everybody was really, really into at the time, and still are, I suppose. But without the interstate, they were driving right through here,
Oh, yeah.
driving right through downtown
Yeah.
Abilene, even before the bypass.
Yeah.
The
If you were
14th
crossing the
Street.
country, you were going Old 40.
Yeah.
It seemed like. So.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. And Old 40, if you follow it now, I think it goes to not Colorado Springs, but it goes straight to Colorado.
Yeah.
And so you can follow that out that way. And if you're heading to New Mexico, maybe that's an alternate route to take. But anyway, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the tradition of the paddle. Where did that come from? You see several paddles back here, and there's piles of them all over the place. Now,
have a lot.
what's the history of that?
You're the chief paddler.
Chief paddle.
Well, Lena got to paddle President Eisenhower, and recently Todd got to paddle Mary Eisenhower during a Rotary Club meeting.
Right.
She is his granddaughter and lives here in Abilene now. So that was a big honor. No, the story I've been told is they were a device that she would take pies out of the oven so she wasn't burning her arms. And one night somebody had a birthday and she ran out of the kitchen with a paddle, whacked them on the butt, and there we are.
The legend was born.
Yeah, that's what happened.
And we've heard stories, lots of stories of there. I mean, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of paddles out there. And I believe, is Hank Royer the one that's
I think
bought a lot
Hank-
up and
Hank was
returned
the
them
one.
to people when he sees their name on them? But
Lena had an auction and many garage sales, from what I understood, and sold them. People would come out, find their name on the paddle, and buy their paddle. And Hank bought a lot of them and hands them out to people.
and now we have literally hundreds
Yeah,
of
we
paddles.
have hundreds of
that-
paddles
Yeah.
And there's probably
over
what,
the years.
20 to 30 names on each paddle on each side. So we've continued to paddle a lot of people since '95.
Yep.
Most of them really enjoy it. Some of them don't
Some of them
want to
begrudgingly, yeah.
participate.
It's kind of like going to
Some
a
of
Mexican
them
restaurant,
don't.
getting a sombrero on, and
That's
getting,
right, whipped cream.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, you're also known for your pies as well, the home baked pies. So I assume that tradition also goes back to Lena, or is that something that you?
I'm not
brought?
sure. I mean,
Okay.
mom baked a lot of pies at the buckboard, and that's why we've served a lot of pies. I'm sure Lena did too, and I haven't really looked at the menus from
You know,
her
I don't know.
if she had a
That's
lot
a-
of pie or not, but that was just something my mom always did a lot of, and grandparents. So we've continued that tradition. I come from a family of a lot of cooking.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I mean, you guys have seen the restaurant business in Abilene change over the years, and lots of come and go, and some have stayed, and that type of thing. What do you think are some of the challenges facing restaurants today from your perspective, and maybe the front of the house. Tammy's in charge of the front of the house, and gets to do customer service. Tell us a little bit about those changes that you've seen.
Social media is a big thing now. You kind of have to be on Facebook and interact, and we've even taken orders for different pies,
Online,
meals.
yeah.
You know, people will reach out to you online or through
It's
Facebook
changing.
messaging. Yeah, so it has changed a lot.
As far as the demographics of Abilene, I mean, I've worked in a lot of bigger areas. Before I moved home, I was opening stores in Wichita, and I've worked in the Topeka market, and the Kansas City market. I think the one thing that you have to do in a community of Abilene, which is about the same size it's been for 40, 50 years, maybe even longer, is you have to know all the people. And the people love to know when you know all the people.
Right.
And I think that was one of the draws initially that brought my dad back to Abilene and into this business. Was he knew a lot of people here, and he wanted to get back to not being in a big community. We were in a town roughly 300,000-400,000 before we moved home. He loved being kind of a big fish in a small pond, and reconnecting with being someone that everyone knew, and he knew everyone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in a community this size, that's one of the things that you have to, if you want to thrive, you have to be there, and you have to, connect with all the people.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, and your brand recognition has been built over so many decades that's there, but you always have to stay in front of people and keep it fresh and that type of thing. And so yes, keeping connection with the locals is very important, kind of solidifying your base. But I think a lot of, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but there's a lot of local businesses that really rely on money coming from the outside.
Yeah.
To make a go of it, particularly in a town that's, as you mentioned, the demographics are roughly the same as they've been for several years. But the overhead continues to go up, and so you've always got to make that margin better and sell more. So how do you, I mean, what do you see as far as travelers and out of town visitors? What is the primary driver of that for your business?
They're
Well-
going past on I-70, tour from Colorado a lot of times, and I mean I've talked to people from everywhere, and we do get a lot of international people too because of the Eisenhower Center.
Yep.
So
yeah, and I mean, we'd be kidding ourselves to think that a town this size would have the amount of traffic coming through it if it wasn't for the Eisenhower Center.
Oh,
So that is a
absolutely.
huge draw.
Absolutely.
And the theater, really.
the theater
Great Plains Theater has
helped
been a
get
draw
it-
with
yeah.
the
We
busing
get a lot
industry.
of people coming to go to a play, come out and have dinner,
Yeah.
even movies.
Yeah, I do know that there are communities in north central Kansas that do do busing tours specifically for the theater and bring them in, and this is obviously on their itinerary and stop. Now, is that something you organize at all, or is it just that they know you're here, or is it something you actually work with the theater or other the Eisenhower to
When
kind
we
of
have a
promote and draw
bus,
in?
we have a group menu. So we're all set up, have the food ready. We know they're coming. So we have had some larger groups drop in. And,
I think the Chamber's been really helpful with that, and the Convention Visitors Bureau.
Sure,
So.
sure. Yeah, and you also do catering, and Todd had mentioned off camera that you have 4 catering gigs this week, and that's a lot of extra effort in different times. So other than just running the restaurant, so how has that business been? Do we have the venues that people want to come into that you do cater at? How's that part of the business?
I think it's definitely an aspect that if you don't do something like that, I mean, it can hurt you if you've got to meet the needs of everybody, and we try and do as much as possible here because we have such a larger area in the back room, but it's just one of those things where we feel that's a valuable asset to our business if we can do a lot of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, you do a lot of class reunions, family reunions in the back room here.
This, that, and the other, yeah.
This, that, and
Wedding
anybody will come
rehearsals,
in,
and yeah. So.
Yeah, very good, very good. So from a standpoint of running a business, what has changed that you think has been the most challenging, or something that's really been very positive that you're kind of surprised about?
Technology, of course, has changed everything. I mean, from when I started in the restaurant business in the 70s and 80s to now, it's totally, you've got to know some technology. I think I was talking the other day, I forget who I was talking about, but we had our very first computer in our house in 1995, and just the leaps and bounds of what that has meant to now is just astounding, because if you aren't on social media, if you aren't doing some of your day-to-day stuff on the computer, even my ordering for my trucks that bring in my supplies, I mean, that's all done on the computer now. So that's been a big change. Not to mention when we started here in '95, one of the things that Mom and Dad had never done was take credit cards. Well, today, credit cards are 90% of our sales.
Yeah.
If we didn't take credit cards, I mean,
Debit
no one
cards,
writes checks
everybody's-
anymore. No one,
Yep.
uses cash anymore. So credit cards are king, and that's just from '95 to now. It was probably 5% of our sales to 90% of our sales is credit cards now. So it's transforming, not just the restaurant business, but all different businesses.
Yeah, and trying to keep your brand out there through social media for some small businesses can be a challenge, because you're running a business, you're operating a business. Where do you find time for that?
It's another task
It's
that
another-
you have
it
to
is.
accomplish.
Especially
Yeah.
for a small business person.
Yeah.
But it's easy for me to run in the kitchen, snap a picture of a delicious cheeseburger that Todd just made and post it out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Or his pie.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is to remember to do that at least once a day.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
the hardest
The
thing.
consistency is the hard part.
Yeah.
Chain
Yeah.
restaurants have
Yeah.
a whole wing of people that do that.
Right.
It's up to us as the
all of
individuals
it.
to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and the upside to that is that it's always more personable. It's always more personal when you're doing it's not a generic boilerplate type of item. So it well, that's the social media and getting all those things tied together. I think all small businesses know they need to do it. It's just finding that the challenging way to get that done and keep it fresh. So
Time.
absolutely. So from an employee base, you guys have had a lot of long-term employees, correct? And
Yeah.
how do you see the labor pool? Has that changed over time? And
It has. We've had really good luck with high schoolers. I always seem to get just the right people to work in the dining room. It's harder to find help in the back of the house, I think. But we used to have the segment of housewives that had kids in school, a few hours during the day. That's
dwindled,
a
though.
difficult area to find, because housewives are working full time and taking care of kids. So I don't know. I think
And
that's
don't
different.
you think the challenge too is the kids that we do get are the kids that are doing a lot of things.
Active.
So the challenge
and
is they're all active
extracurricular.
and
Scheduling.
yeah, if you want
kinda
something done, ask somebody who's
difficult.
busy.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the challenge, is they've got so much going on. You have to have a lot of them to work around a lot of their. I mean, we had two kids in New York this week because of the singers,
Yes.
and all the athletes that we've had a lot of ball players and stuff. So you have to have a lot of them instead of just one or two good ones.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Now, over the years, some of those kids come back and just kind of talk about how their experience here really helped them in future
all
life
of them
and
want to
that
come
type-
back and eat steak strips.
Right. I
I
can't
can
blame them for
always
that.
tell when someone walks in the door and they're 30 something,
Yeah.
and they have that deer in the headlights look on their face, and they want to order steak strips.
Yeah, especially when you
Yeah.
post pictures of food.
Yes,
They'll
yeah,
go, oh my gosh,
yeah.
when do you
Well,
get
that's
back
the
there?
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Well, I'll tell you, I tried to get Todd to tell me what the recipe for that is, and he said it's a family secret.
I don't even know it.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It's
so
not written down.
It's not written down?
No, no, it
I
isn't.
figured it was some bank vault somewhere, you know?
No, no. Well, Mom has it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a good luck finding.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I think the final thing that we wanted to visit about today is Abilene as a community. And I know when I came to town and visited with all the small businesses, it was that we need to cross promote, and that Abilene's got so many unique businesses to come see, and you know, it's certainly a strong tourism draw for a community in Kansas. But tell us a little bit about how those businesses have worked together to make everybody stronger.
I think that the one powerful thing about a place like Abilene, Kansas is that whether it's places like Country Mart or Tim Holm up at Holm Automotive or any local business that's been here for any amount of time, the one thing that bonds us all together is we try and work together to make the community better. Whether it be through donations or golf tournaments to raise money for hospice, and recommending each other to tourists. That's what makes the community so strong, because we each have an ambassadorship to this great little town called Abilene.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that helps us work together with places like the Eisenhower Center and the Historical Society, which are something not a lot of communities our size have the benefits of those options. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges there is to get the frontline people, you know, that customers are coming in contact with, particularly in some of our chain restaurants and some of our other businesses, you know, to know what Abilene has to offer and to share that, and so it's not a formal cross promotion as much as it's just having everybody aware of the community and aware of the things to do, and so, you know, every bit helps, I suppose, in that realm. So,
it really is like a Mayberry here. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's the way we love it. That's the big draw for mom and pops like us. I mean, you can make an awesome living in a small town still.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's something that people, you know, they move on, they move out of town, they have some nostalgia about their hometown, but they just can't see a way to, if they wanted to, make a living here. But it is possible, and I think you're proof of that, and there's several others that are, and I think just sharing that message with our descendants and having them come back is hopefully a positive thing that'll happen to keep this town going with the uniqueness that we do have. So, well, very good. Well, Tammy, Todd,
Thank you.
I appreciate your time today. And if you don't know where they are, come on Old 40 here at the Curve on the west end of Abilene. Mr. K's Farmhouse, the restaurant on the hill. You can't miss it. And yeah, come by, have a visit, and get the steak strip basket. That's my personal recommendation. So definitely get that. So anyway, I appreciate you for viewing. This has been Eagle Means Business. I'm James Holland, your host, and we will see you next month.